Hi there, welcome to our video seminar on divination, intuition, and synchronicity. My name is Henry Reed, and I'll be your guide here for these learning adventures. In our first video seminar, we learned about divine mind, how divination is a process of looking into divine mind. We use our intuition to try to make an attunement and see into what is divine mind perceiving, what does it understand of the moment, what is in the divine plan or divine harmony. In this video seminar, we're going to be learning about the divination process itself, what I call the divine play. It's like a game. You'll see how a divination process is like using a game board to perceive into the larger world. Very often, cultures have used games to have religious significance, as if there was a cosmic play. And that's what we're going to be learning about in this video seminar. And the purpose of it is to help to free you to use your creativity in how you use your own divination system. For example, if you're going to be using the tarot cards, what we're going to learn on this seminar, I think will help you to learn how to use those cards in a much freer and more creative way. And what I'm hoping that you'll gain from this video seminar is to be able to see the forces at work in a divination game. We call it a game because the cosmic forces are at play. And the divination system, whether it's the tarot deck or some other method, allows us to see through the play of the divine game what might be going on in life itself. And if you understand some of the general principles that are happening as you give a reading, perhaps that will free you up to be more creative, to feel more spontaneous, and maybe even to invent your own divination game. That would be really neat. I've taught many live classes on divination, and we'll be seeing some excerpts from these classes on this videotape. You'll get to see the students working with some of the divination games that we've developed in order to teach some of these principles that are involved. In fact, we're going to look in on a class right now and see the explanation of what all divination games have in common. You'll be able to see some of the universal dimensions of any divination system, and hopefully you'll come to recognize these dimensions in the system that you use. Let's take a look now. Now what we're going to be exploring is the form of the divination tool itself. I want you to come to be able to appreciate some common elements that are going on in all of the different manifestations of divination. We, as a human beings, invented divination as a projection of our understanding about the world, and we express that understanding in many different forms depending upon our locality, the culture, and so on. And I want us to be able to see the universals behind the different individual forms. So first of all, we draw this circle, say, and this is the world. This is also us. We are the world. That's the basic assumption. I am that, as above, so below. So the world out there and the me in here are as one. So in divination, you're going to find basically three dimensions, or three aspects, or three levels to this world. One has to do with what we might say is dividing up the world into arenas, or into places. For example, we might divide up the world like that and say this is inside, and this is outside. Okay, that would be one way of dividing up the world. We might say, well, that doesn't really express how we see things. Let's divide up the world like this. There's the upper world and the lower world. Okay, so those would be the two arenas the two areas in life that we recognize. What might be another way that we could divide up the world? Let's think of some others. We could say, okay, here is the world inside my cave. Here is the world out with my, this is in my cave, in my community, out there, and this is the heavens, the spirit world. So there's these three different areas of my life that I can be in. Let's take astrology, for example. Astrology divides up the world. In astrology, we have this circle to represent the world, and they divide up the world into what's called houses, 12 houses. And each house represents a different area of life. This first house is yourself. Say, the second house is money and resources. The third house is communications, and so on and so on and so on. That they say we can divide up the world into 12 areas. All right? Let's take another. Dividing. Let's see. Hold on a second. Let's turn that off for another way, say we could divide up the world. Let's draw the world like a big house. Okay? Here's the attic. Here's the front porch. Here's the bedroom. Here's the dining room. Here's the kitchen. Here's the family room. Here's the basement. Here's the children's playroom and the parents' room. So, just another way. And each of these different approaches to dividing up of the world would be an expression of perhaps our interests, our culture, how we come to see really what are the important areas. And they often have metaphorical or symbolic significance as well. For example, let's take the house. And we divide up the house into the various areas. What might the front porch represent? The front porch part of our life. Our social relations, the appearances we put on to people. What would the, say, the bedroom area represent? Our unconscious, where we sleep, the part of us that's in the dark, or the resting part, the rejuvenation part, down in the basement, the discard area, or the utilities, our organs, the instincts part of ourselves. Up here in the attic could be our memories, the place where we store things that we don't need anymore but that are valuable to us. The children's play area could be our fantasy land where imagination reigns. You could make up interpretations for any of those. What we're doing is we're saying, this is life, this is the world, this is me, and I'm dividing the stage into different areas where things happen. Okay? So that's the first part. So we have an arena, a stage where things happen, and now the next thing that we do in any divination game is that we have the stage, and now we have the actors. Now let's just use, for example, the house as to represent, this is our divination game, and we call it the house. See, it's where you live, it's where things happen. Now we have an actor. One of the actors, say, is Dad. And one of the actors is Mom. And one of the actors is, say, Jane, and maybe one of the actors is Fido. So we have Mom, Dad, Jane, and Fido to represent our masculine energies, our feminine energies, our childlike energies, and our instinctive energies. That for some reason or other, when we think about who are the forces, the spirits, the movers, the actors, the doers, not the places, but the active agents in our life, in one's life, we can cut it any way we want. If we're going to use the house metaphor for the place, we might use family members as the actors. So now all of a sudden we've introduced the second dimension. We have the where and we have the who. Okay, now what we can do is through some divination process, whether it's by a dance that we make, a movement of our hands, a random throwing of dice, of shells, of laying of cards, or what have you, through the synchronistic magic, we have the actors find themselves located in certain areas. So say all of a sudden we do our thing, and there's Fido in the family room. And we have Dad, or say Mom, we have Mom in the basement. And we have Dad, see, we have Dad up in the attic. And we have Jane. I don't know if this is, yes. Okay, we'll put Jane, say Jane is in the kitchen. Okay, so now let's just pretend that that landed there. We're doing a divination. So we say, what does it mean then if this energy is active in this part of life? This energy is active in this part of life. This energy is active in this part, and this energy is active in that. We have the child energy in the cooking part of ourselves, the child energy going on in the place of change where raw material is turned into something useful. That's school knowledge being turned into wisdom, groceries turned into nourishing food, life experiences turned into some kind of learning, and the child is the energy that's in that particular area. So maybe a playful approach is being taken to transformation. Who knows? Down here in the basement, where we have the unconscious, instinctive part of ourselves, we have the mother principle at work. And what would that mean to us? And we can start working with that interpretation. We have the father energy up in the memories part of ourself, as if perhaps that would mean, how would a father energy operate differently in the memories part of ourself than if the mother energy were operating in that area? Maybe the mother energy would be working to sort through values and caring about memories. The father energy might be sorting them according to categories or approaching them in some other kind of a different way. So we have these actors are operating in these different places, and that's going to then affect the state of the world. Okay, stop for a second. Basement. And we put the kid, say, in the front porch. Jane's in the front porch, Dad's in the family room, Mom's in the kitchen, and Fido's in the basement. Now let's just sort of fantasize for a little bit. What difference would that make compared to our first situation? We have, say, the memories part of us is not being particularly activated right now, but the coming together of the family is being activated by the father principle. So I mean that perhaps some statement about tradition, certain rules of order, or the way a family should work is that kind of energy is being applied. We have mom, maybe some would say mom is in her home base, perhaps, I don't know, of cooking, nurturing for the family, that this particular area of life is being acted upon by an energy that's well suited to its function. We have the child on the front porch, and so that the public persona, the way in which we invite the people to interact with other people is either childlike, it's innocent, it's playful, what have you. The dog in the basement maybe would be suggestive of perhaps again that the natural instinct kind of energy is around where we take things for granted in the bodily functions, what have you. And maybe we would come to say, as we worked with this, that when the dog is in the basement, there's a certain special harmony because there's a natural correspondence between instinctive energy and this part of life, the workings of the body. And somehow when the dog is in the basement, there's a certain all-rightness with the world. Or when mom is in the kitchen, there's a certain all-rightness to the world. This would be reflecting some kind of cultural value of the person who invented this divination system about the natural harmony of things. Okay, a similar one would be, again, to go back to astrology, for example, and we can see this. Astrology, like I say, it uses a round picture of the universe. It divides the world into 12 areas or houses. The first house is the self, and the second house is money and resources, and the third house is communication. What does it have for actors? Who are the energies in the astrology system? In astrology, the energies are planets. The planet Mars, say, can be located in one of the houses. The planet Venus, I have, like for that, for example, the planet Venus in the house of money. So this is saying this energy that Venus represents, this feminine love energy, is activating and functioning in the money area of my life. A way in which, in astrology, part of the synchronicity is tied to a clock, because the movement of the planets during the course of the year, and they're picking up on a cycle, a natural cycle, like we have the 12 months of the year. So Venus moves around the chart. So at one point in your life you will have Venus moving through your second house. At another part of your life you'll have Venus moving through the communication part of your life. You were born with it in a certain place, as if you came in, the divine moment of your birth had Venus located in a particular place, and then later on in your life you have the momentary energy of Venus temporarily in a particular place. It's the same pattern. We have the actors and we have the places. Different systems have different ways of getting them there. When we toss I Ching coins, it's the random toss. When we use astrology, we're looking at the sky and the movement of the planets and the timing of your question. When we work with tarot, we're working with the randomization of the cards and which ones happen to be drawn. If we're working with your hand, a hand is another form of divination, although the randomness seems less evident because we're working there with expression. But expression is another form. We can say this, that here is the world. The world, life, me, in the form of a hand. This is the world. I see the world in the palm of my hand. What are the various parts of the world? Here we're going to say, well, then we're allowed to cut up the world any way we want. So we say maybe we cut the world into past, we cut the world into future, we cut the world into the public, into relationships, artistic expression, healing ability, all these different areas of the world. And then what are the actors? The actors then become particular lines, particular wrinkles that develop, that come and go. And the diviner looks at the hand and says, in this area you have a particular quality of line, or over in this area you have a particular quality of line. And it's not so much a chance thing, it's not the movement of the clocks. What we have in this case, you might say, is personal expression. It would be kind of akin to imagining yourself as a tree that's unfolding. And as you unfold, you express wrinkles in your hand. As you unfold, let's say another divination system would be to have you make marks on paper. And there your unfolding is expressed in terms of a behavior. The way that you make those marks on behavior is partly a function of your physiology, a function of the chance moment, the function of how you're feeling at that time, in the same way that your lines are. There's a number of ways of propelling the actors or creating the script that the actors are following out on the particular stage. Okay, now we'll introduce a third dimension to divination. And the third dimension has to do with the condition of the actors. We have parts of the house. We have the houses of the zodiac. Say in tarot, we divide it, we say, in tarot we might say, this is the world. This is now. This is, the world is divided into now, your ideals, your assumptions, your future, and your past. So this is how we're going to look at the world. There's 5 places in it. And who are the actors? The actors are the cards. So we shuffle up the deck, we think about our now, and all of a sudden particular cards are assigned to the particular positions. Right here. So we've got orange in the underlying assumptions. We've got purple in the ideals. Brown landed in the here and now. Red landed in our future. And green in our past. These cards, whether it's the king, the world, the tower, the 7 of spades, or what have you, are the various active forces. And they are the ones who are operative in these particular areas of life. It's like a stage. And we create different things. We have downstage, upstage, right, left, representing the different parts of life. And then out onto the stage come the particular actors. And then the next question is, they can be in a condition. And in tarot, for example, the condition of the cards is the card right side up or is it upside down? Because if a tarot card, say the tower, is right side up, it means one thing. If the tower card is upside down, it means something else. So the condition of the card has to do with the condition of that particular energy and how it's going to manifest. An upright castle, tower in your future has a lot different effect on you than an upside down castle. They mean different things. Now, let's take the example of the house again. Here we have our house. And we have our rooms. And say we have Dad. Dad is in the family room. Now, Dad can be in the family room in a couple of different ways. Dad can be smiling and happy and singing, or Dad could be pouting and angry and gruff. Because it could represent two states then, two conditions in which this force could manifest itself. Very upbeat, really wanting to bring people close, Jupiterian, outgoing and giving, or a kind of a negative, down, angry energy that tends to push other things away and make other energies more muted, and downplaying. Even the dog would go hide somewhere. It would be harder for other energies to express themselves when the Dad energy was really angry. So we have those conditions. Another one is in astrology, we have, again, the circle. We have the circle broken up into the 12 areas of life. And we have the actors, the planets, in them, according to when you were born, or the particular time and situation in the universe when you ask for the reading. Then we have the conditions. There's two conditions in astrology. One is the condition of the cycle of death and rebirth that's governed by the seasons. And that has to do with the astrological signs of Aries and Capricorn and Virgo. And those represent the different months of the year, the seasons of the year. And that is like a template that can shift. So if this is Virgo here, as the months go by, this Virgo moves around so that at a particular time, say, this planet here, say this is Jupiter, it's in the sign of, it's in the house of relationships. So you're having a Jupiterian effect in your relationships. But the sign of Virgo is casting a particular spell on Jupiter. So Jupiter is acting in a Virgo way. Jupiter is very expansive. It's an energy that says, oh, I want to give to everybody. But with Virgo influencing it, it wants to give to everybody in a very precise manner. So now Jupiter is doling out the gifts. One for you, one for you, one for you, and making sure everything is very equitable. Whereas when Scorpio, the sign Scorpio comes around and is ruling Jupiter, then there's sort of maybe a tricksterish quality to it, and it has a way of transforming things. So Jupiter gives Pat a gift that when she starts playing with it, it changes her life in some fashion, in some unanticipated way. So the energy is working very differently. So that's one way in which the mood or condition of the actors can be affected by what astrological sign is influencing them. The other way in astrology that the mood of an energy and an actor can be affected is by relationships with the other actors. We talk about aspects. Jupiter can be in a 90-degree aspect with another planet, meaning that they're sort of pulling at cross purposes. Or Jupiter could find itself opposed to a planet over here. So this Uranus's energy and Jupiter's energy are opposite to each other. So whatever Jupiter is trying to do, then Uranus is trying to do the opposite thing. And so that's affecting how they manifest. So again, it's the same pattern. You've got the areas in life. You have the actors who are inhabiting some of those areas of life. And then those actors are in certain states or conditions or moods. And how those moods are determined depends on the divination system. In astrology, you have those too. In tarot, it's the upside downness of the cards. In other systems, they use different things. Now, you're not going to find every divination system following this precisely, but you are going to see that to some extent or another, the divination system is going to work with those three things. It's going to take the world. This is a unified picture of the world. It's also you. It's going to be cut up into different areas. Actors or forces are going to enter into that stage, and then they are going to be affected by qualities. Now I'm going to show you a particular divination.
Well, before we go any farther, we need to stop this video and have you do something. I'm going to ask you to draw a town. That's right. Take a piece of paper like this, and on the paper I want you to make a diagram of a town, imaginary town, your ideal town, whatever you'd like. This is not an art project, as you'll see, but actually a very interesting approach to understanding divination. And on this town you are to include certain buildings, and they are these: a castle, a cemetery, a church, a factory, a prison, a railway station, a school, and a town hall. So those are the 8 items that you're to include and put anywhere you like. And then after you've made your drawing of the town, you can come back and play this video, continuing on, and you'll see me explaining to the students about the purpose of it and how we're going to use it in understanding divination. So let's put this tape on pause, get out a piece of paper, make your drawing, and after you've done, you can come back and look in on our discussion of the town test.
I'm going to show you now a particular approach to divination that we're going to look at from 2 different levels, because it gets us into thinking analogically and not concretely. Okay, we all had the assignment of taking a piece of paper, and on it you were to draw a town. You were to place a school, a factory, a railroad station, town hall, etc., etc. And I'm going to stick up here for you to see the town that I drew when I first was confronted with this particular task. Stick it right there for you to see. Oops. All the close it all the way, maybe so that it's just filling the frame. If you can't, that's all right, because I can do it in post afterwards. Okay. So you can give it a shot. Yeah, just keep going all the way. That's it. Okay. Now, here's my town. I added here in the middle, I added a little fountain just for the fun of it. Here's my castle. Here's the schoolyard. Here's the cemetery. Maybe you can see the little crosses. Here's the church with the prison attached to it. Here's town hall. I didn't quite get finished the dome, or it's faded out over the years. This drawing is 20-some years old. A village where people live. This is the factory, and the railway station is right there and is running off. And this is a oh no, these were shops, and this is the factory. And the factory has a chute coming into the railway station. This is a track around it. And here's a little river going there. Okay, so I had done this, and when I presented it to my analyst, he looked at this and said, okay, first of all, what you need to know is that the town was the first mandala. And he showed me a picture of a Chinese, looks like a Chinese rug or Tibetan rug. It's a drawing of a town, and it's in the form of a mandala, meaning it's in this square structure. And a mandala is a design that's meant to suggest that the self and God and the universe are one and the same. And so look at divination spaces as mandalas, in that a divination space, a horoscope wheel, for example, a mandala saying, this is the world. The town, a mandala saying, this is the world. Now, the way he cut up the space was a very classical way. He had me fold it in thirds this way to create 2 lines, and fold it in thirds this way to create 2 lines, so that I basically have a tic-tac-toe frame over the town. And he called these areas specific areas of life. This being the past, this being the present, and this being the future. Past, present, future. With time running like this, the way the mind tends to organize it. He called this area up here the area of heaven, the superconscious mind. This area here, the conscious mind. And this area down here, the instinctive mind. So we have the instinctive mind of the past, the instinctive mind of the future, or the future experienced instinctively, the future experienced from a superconscious point of view. Now what we have here is a divination system in which we have the areas of life, and then we have the actors. The actors in this case being in the form of buildings, where the buildings represent certain energies, you might say. The castle being, say, the energy of fantasy. The church being the energy of the religion. Prison being the energy of restriction and transformation and penitence. The cemetery being the energy of heritage and tradition and the things that we value from the past. Town hall being the energy of social relations, orderly society. The factory being the energy of work. The railway station being the energy of development, as in the West, where the West was one as they extended their railroad train into there. And the school being the energy of learning. So then where you place these particular energies has to do then, you create a divinatory picture or model of yourself and how the energies are at work in you.
Okay, because this concept of the placement on the town is so important and plays a role in our understanding of the stage in which the divine play occurs, I want to take you to another class in which I was talking about essentially the same thing, but with regard to the grid over the town, I go into a little bit more detail and explain it a little bit differently. So let's go and look at that now.
Okay, now we've got in the space. Look at this town now as a space in which we've divided into these areas. And I'd like you to consider that your town is actually a picture of yourself, or is in fact a mandala. I got it. The very first mandala was a Tibetan drawing of a town. And so we're going to consider the town that you drew as actually a mirror of yourself, a self-portrait. And we're dividing the area into, from left to center to right, as a time dimension. Whereas this represents your past, this represents your present, and this represents your future. Okay? Now another way to look at it is not, this is not just the time past, but it's also in the sense of coming out of unconsciousness, moving into consciousness. It's also, if you stand here, just a second ago was over here behind you, and just a moment from now is right in front of you. So in some sense, it's your direction of opening, your direction of evolution, your movement through time, as well as it being the historical past and the historical future. So this could be 20 years ago, it could be a microsecond ago, or it could be the where you're coming from. Okay, now let's look at these dimensions. This up here is the area of the superconscious or spiritual consciousness. Down here is the level of the instincts. And here in this middle band would be the area of consciousness or ego consciousness. So then up here we're dealing with the superconscious mind or spiritual concerns, or if we think of it in terms of Casey's idea of the unmanifest coming down and manifesting, or the different levels of the mind, then this would be the universal mind coming through the conscious mind and down into the body. Definitely the rootedness, the earth, the heaven, and the surface of things. So we're going to then make this type of division. And as we see later, when we explore the divination game generally, that we take an area of the board that we're playing on and we divide it into areas representing areas of life. And we're doing that with the town test. Now, we have on this grid, we have players, you might say, the actors. And those are the various energy structures, the school, the town hall, the prison, and so on. And we'll see how they're placed in a person's chart or town, and we make some kind of an interpretation based on that placement. How did the actors get there? Well, you drew them there. So here it's not, quote, by chance, it's not by a synchronistic kind of a throw, it's because you made choices. At one level you say, well, I was thinking this, I was thinking that. That would be called your rationalization, your conscious reasons for putting this here and putting that there and so on. At the same time, you have to assume that the unconscious was working through you, God working through you, the self working through you, what have you, and letting you make up whatever reasons you want, but at the same time presenting a surprising picture back to you when you start to look at it. Now, one of the things about a divination system like this that allows you to express, which would be kind of like in handwriting would be another one because you're expressing and so on. You can say, well, since I know how it'll be interpreted and I have some control over how the things land and so on, and the condition of them has to do with the way you draw them. Are they faint? Are they small? Are they colorful? There's infinite variety of conditions of the actors. It's a big universe of qualities. Like, for example, in my church, I have the church upside down on the one hand, and it's the only upside down building in the whole drawing. But I have lots of detail in the rose windows, lots of detail in the colored doors, and so on. Lots and lots of detail here. So suggestive of, a lot of interest, but at the same time it's upside down. What does that exactly mean? Here my factory, very artistic windows, but totally blank, and you wonder, what does that mean? And so on. Now, we could interpret your town as it is, as you've drawn it, with your way of drawing being the chance factor or whatnot. And we say, like, for instance here, let's look at me. I have in the middle of my town this fountain that's coming out. And the fountain like that somehow gives expression to some kind of a spirit feeling. And so it's like centered in the water of life somehow. And the church and the town hall are opposed to each other. And it's as if somehow the church is in the instinctive area, but town hall is in the area of the superconscious mind, so that traditional religious values per se are operating instinctively, but he's giving a social relations, he's approaching them from a superconscious point of view, and they are both dancing around the spirit of life, so that he's got a lot of energy invested here in trying to somehow create between social relations approach from a spiritual point of view, and yet with an instinctive approach to organized in religion, trying to somehow work in some balanced way around the water of life. His development seems to be in the future. The railroad train is not coming out of the past, but it's going into the future. And a lot of social relations here, the shopping, the getting together in town, and so on, seem to be leading up to that. And the work down here in the instinctive area, it's as if for him, work is a very instinctive kind of thing to do. It's more oriented to the future, as if he were preparing for his work. His real work hasn't come yet, but when it does, it's going to tie into his development very much. So his development and his work are going to be hand in hand, working out hand in hand. Schooling had been very important to him. He's drawing from education and moving toward development and sharing. And he's drawing from the education, but he's leaving that behind him. And on and on and on we can go, using this to interpret this person's life.
1998.
It's interesting that after all these years, I'm still very much interested in that original town drawing that I did. I've never done another one. I'm still drawing meaning from that town, and sometimes it guides me in thinking about myself. And it stimulates, even today, new thoughts about where I'm headed in my own style of living. It's a very interesting approach to drawing a mandala, and also, as we'll see, a basis for divination. Now, it's up to you to interpret your own town. Nobody else can do it for you. You'll be the one who does it. You'll use your intuition, and at the same time, it gets you into the practice of pulling together various symbols, using their placement, telling their story, pulling it together into some kind of meaningful narrative. But to help you a little bit more, we'll go back to class and look at one or two other students' towns so you'll see more than simply mine. Let's go take a look now. One of the things that's most striking about this town is the sense of movement that goes from left to right. The river turns into like a yellow road leading up to the school. Beneath the school is a prison, and beneath that is work. It's as if the person has moved from the resources of traditional religion and inspiration, and through social relations is heading toward her destiny with a higher form of learning that will force her to make a commitment, and she will have an instinctive quality of work towards this higher level of learning that she'll be committed to. And that this is constantly the direction of her movement. One thing that's very interesting about this town is all the buildings are blocked off, separate, and then you have this strand of this road in this very interesting diamond-shaped pattern. And it surrounds the church, and the church really has the only color in the whole town. It's the most colorful. And so your focus is on that. It seems as if there's a focus on traditional religion that has a way of blocking off other aspects of life. Each thing is placed, though, very ceremoniously, as if to say that somehow the person wants to travel around and meet these different areas, but they must always be related to the traditions in which she was raised. One thing that's very interesting about this town is how the castle sits right in the middle.
It's surrounded by green. It's perhaps the most intense aspect of the town drawing. The smokestacks of the castle, or the flags that are flying, are very similar to the railroad tracks. So you get a sense of development, and the castle, the imagination, are very much related. This person seems to be really focused upon their imagination and to develop themselves through the imagination. Yet it leads off the town, out of sight. We're not really sure how things are going to come about, how they will manifest themselves. So there's an uncertainty here. This town has a lot of definition. It's very well laid out. You get a clear sense of movement from left to right. The town hall is right in the center. It's as if this person's development is going to come through social relations. Work will be in the future glorified in some way, leading to higher level of inspirations. With the sun on top of that, it seems to emphasize then the future that holds a quality of individuation, the higher self, coming about through their development. The castle has been left behind, schooling has been left behind, and what lies in the future is some hard work. And that the development is almost certain the way it is drawn. This town is drawn very carefully, very formally. There's a very artistic presentation to the town. One of the things that you notice is how everything seems to point upward. All the trees and the buildings have an upward pointing aspect. It's as if everything is being dedicated or oriented to the superconscious mind, towards spiritual principles. Their water right in the middle seems to suggest very much of a focus upon the spirit, and yet at the same time there's no movement. The roads, perhaps that they go around to different places, but because of the way that they're arranged on the town, you feel that everything is going to ultimately move up into the sky. Everything is being given to spirit. But now what we're going to do is we're going to make a shift. We're going to take the town as itself a stage where the areas are going to be defined in two ways. There's the superconscious area, the conscious area, and the instinctive area, and then the past, present, and future. But also, according to the way each person has created their divination game, their particular energies of life are now going to become places of life. The school place of life, which for me, the school place of life happens to be located in my conscious past. The tradition place of life happens to be located in my instinctive past, and so on. All of these are places, and they're being defined in two different ways. The objects and the 3x3 division. And then we're going to introduce a whole new set of actors. I am going to pass around to all of you a set of coins. You are to take out of this bag, borrowing from me, understand, a quarter and a nickel, a dime, and a penny. And then I want you to clear your decks there, lay your town test down, and I want you to make your own determination as to how you will randomly allow the quarter, the dime, the nickel, and the penny to land or be placed on your town. First, arrange your town flat on the table. And then you go around, everybody get your coins. Oh, you don't have to fold it. No, just have it on the table. And then whether you're going to flip or you're going to close your eyes and move your hands around or whatever way you want to, what I want you to do is find some way, before you do this though, wait, because I have more to say, you'll find some way for those 4 coins to, quote, randomly locate themselves on your town, whether they're heads, whether they're tails, let that be random. And then we'll go from there. Now, before you do it, I want you to set the intention that as you're doing this divining, you're wanting to learn something about how various energies are operating in your life. So set that intention. That's important, that you want to be learning something about yourself and you are open to learning from this experiment. Okay, so go and make the toss or the movement or however you're going to get the coins on there. Okay, and I'm just showing you with something that you use to divine yourself in the drawing of the town. Now we're working at another level, and I'm making up a divination game. Okay, first of all, you have the 4 coins representing the 4 actors. These are going to represent, the 4 coins are going to represent 4 forces in life. Okay? And these 4 forces are, the quarter represents the force of relationships. Now this is not based on any Tibetan system. This is just Henry Reed playing around. The dime is going to represent the force of love. The nickel is going to represent the force of thoughts, theories, ideas, and so on. And the penny is going to represent the force of physicality, the physical world. For example, one force of physicality is gravity. One force of physicality is you can't go through walls. Okay. Relationships. One way relationships exercise the force is commitment. Exercises a force in terms of expectations from others. Love as a force, as healing, for example. Nurturing. Thoughts, theories, thought patterns, belief systems, and so on. Okay, so those are the 4 actors. You have the relationship force, the love force, the thought force, and the physical force. Now, consider this. A coin can either be heads or it can be tails. Some of your coins are in a heads position and some are in a tails position. Now what does that mean? When a coin is in the head position, that means that the force is manifesting in its positive, constructive, harmonious way. When the coin is in the tail position, it means that that force is operating in a negative, destructive, chaotic type of way. For example, in relationships, what would be a positive, constructive way in which the force of relationships might operate in terms of cooperation, building strength, working together in harmony. In a negative kind of way, you could have conflict, or you could have one person penning somebody in, holding them back, hurting them through expectations, or abusive relationships, one person dominating another, and so on. Now, love. In the positive way, love would be freely given. Love would be a nurturing kind of a force. On the other hand, it could be operating in an addictive kind of way. It could be kind of controlling, a way of entrapping, a sticky kind of love that seems like love, but somehow it's gone and turned more towards power. It's soured in some fashion. Thoughts. In the positive way, thoughts are inspiring. Thoughts give us patterns and ways of working that can carry us and take us into new places. In the negative kind of way, thoughts can be something that hold us back. They can be patterns. They can be constrictive beliefs. They can be thoughts that we've inherited from other people that we take to be the truth, but they're really not because they've never been examined. Physicality. In the positive sense, heads, physicality is something you can build with. Physicality is the manifestation. It's God's stage. It's our bodies. It's a wonderful playground. In the negative sense, it's restrictions, it's obstructions, it's gravity, it's inertia, it's getting in your way. So on this particular occasion, as you want to learn something about yourself, you've thrown the 4 coins. And so you say, where is relationship operating? Where is the force of relationship operating in my life right now? And you can look and you can see, is it in the superconscious area of your life up here? Or is it down in the instinctive area? And what do you have? Say you find that your quarter, say, I throw it and my quarter lands, say, right here. So that's saying that my quarter is at my relationship force is acting in my life in the very present. It's acting kind of in a here and now way, and it's acting through the area of the superconscious mind. It's in the tails, so it's acting relationships. It's acting in a negative kind of way. Now, what might that mean? Well, again, you see it's drawing out, it's evoking for me. How does that excite my imagination? What does my intuition say? Well, it's saying that relationship in the negative kind of way would be like holding you back, expectancies and so on, and it's almost as if it's coming through the superconscious as if some kind of an idealism is being used on you, like shoulds, or if you're really a loving person, you'll treat me this way, or something like that. And that's how the relationship factor is functioning for me. Now, there's a lot of room for interpretation. There's a lot of room for your intuition to work. Now, we're not done yet, because these actors are complex beings. They don't simply have a positive and a negative side, but they also have intensity. They have strength, and they go through a natural life cycle. So that we say that, say if this is a clock, and we start at high noon, then this is the beginning of a cycle, and the cycle moves and it gets its strength right here, and then peaks out up here, or it's halfway and it peaks out and starts over again. So, say you have heads. Do you have the heads upright? Then it's at a 0 time, it's reached its peak, but it's also going to be going down. And when the head is upside down, that means the energy, although it's positive, has gone halfway through its cycle and it's about to go into a weakening stage. So you also have to look at modulating the strength and the intensity and the power of that according to its rotational point of view. So you have to take that into account too. And as a good diviner, you're very intuitive about the relationship between the twist on it and where it appears. Now, you see, say if this is a particular area, and it's upside down in here and it's down here, maybe you can start imagining it coming down. In your imagination, you start seeing, your intuition is telling you, this is really in motion. It's starting to move this way. There's nothing that the camera would show. possibly, except it being close to this line, and maybe you're sensing that it's moving that way. You also have to consider looking at it that here's another coin and here's another coin and so on. Are they having any kind of a relationship to each other? Is anything going on there? What does your imagination say? We quickly go from a very structured kind of thing where we say quarter is relationships, 10 is the dime is love, energy, 5 is thoughts, 1 is physical, heads and tails is positive and negative, the twist is the strength, and those are all pretty clear cut until we get into some subtleties where it's up to you in terms of the placement and the pattern and so on. What are you seeing? But here we have a divination game. Here we have a divination game that you've half created. I created the other side of it. But I would call it a generic divination game because it's following these patterns. You've got the world divided up into certain areas. You have the actors who enter that world through a chance toss, and then you have the actors also being in particular moods or in certain characterological qualities or stages of expression or qualities of expression. Now you can look at that and say, what do I get out of it? What starts happening for me? Do you have any, you might begin where somewhere along in the interpretation something hits you and something pops out of your mind, some fantasy or something takes place, or you've got a gasp or a bodily sensation might be a place to begin. And then as you start talking it out, thinking it out, writing it out, you start drawing it, you're weaving a story. Because you might say the town itself, before you throw the coins, would be the person's philosophy. It's their worldview. It's their map of how life works. And then these factors come and operate on that. Well, the way her life works, her philosophy, if you came to her for a reading, her philosophy is first gods do all the development. All the development goes through at the superconscious plane. But we have to walk the road of life, and we get help, and we run into particular kinds of things, and so we're going to move along, and so she's moving towards this dime. Now, dimes are love, and look at, she's got love in the full position. It's heads up, and it's in town hall, so that one of the positive things she's working with, you see, is social relations, that love is operating on her social relations at full strength, and somehow through loving relationships with other people, she's going to be able to leave behind this negative effect of relationships on her fantasies, and she's going to make her way, not to worry, she's going to make her way towards this area that she's moving toward, and this is, what's this? Church. So that her church is a bright yellow church, which means in her philosophy, church is a fun kind of a place, bright, lots of colors, and so on. An organized religion for her would be kind of like of a Pentecostal, Baptist kind of approach where you go whoopee and roll on the floor and really have a good time. And it's not at all serious, and she is going to be moving her energy towards that, and that's the way she makes a break. And again, I'm just making all of this up. That's what you do when you do the divination. You just get in, you have set the intent to understand, and you let the imagination work. This is all made up. You expressed your philosophy of life by the town that you drew. Then you took this, accepted this very arbitrary thing of the 4 coins, put them down there, and you're starting to interpret it. Now, there's a certain amount of inherited wisdom in the town, in that the town is an archetypal mandala, the town is an archetypal representation of life. But using the 4 coins, yes, it's somewhat archetypal about tossing coins, but to call them relationship, love, thoughts, and physicality, I was just making that up as I was driving over here. I got to come up with something, you know. Now, what you're going to do, I wanted to give you something generic. You couldn't get too emotionally attached to this because obviously it's kind of hokey. You know, I just sort of made it up. It doesn't come with the aura of tarot, where if we did the tarot reading, you say, oh my God, because you would believe in it so much. This is obviously a game. And yet, at the same time, I could engage you in it. It starts to take on a certain kind of reality. Also, you're starting to see that the process here is similar to all of the, quote, real divination games, that there is some element in common here. I'm involving you in the process and the general archetypal structure of the divination games. Now, your assignment, you see, for the end of class is you are going to present, you're going to invent, and you're going to present to us your own divination game. You're going to create one. Maybe Parker Brothers will buy it, for $1 million, and you'll be rich because you really tap into something. You have to sort of decide, what makes up life? Who am I? What is life? What is the world? What makes up the world? And then you will create your vision of it. You can start any way you want, but I am just going to walk you through very briefly. Okay. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to decide, well, how do I think about the world? And maybe you like a round world. So you're thinking that you're going to have a round world, and how do you kind of, sort of a matter of aesthetics and so on, you say, well, I'm going to divide the world, I'm playing around here, and I want an aesthetic kind of thing because I'm really into the world as a geometrical, harmonious place and so on. And right here in the middle, I'm going to put, I would say the world is composed of the immanent, the transcendent God will stick right here in the middle. And up here is, I'm going to have clouds, and this area is going to represent the religious and spiritual imagination, even though we know that everything is spiritual. And here, I drew a body to represent somehow the physicality of our being. And then we have, over here we have plants to represent the vegetable kingdom. And over here we have animals, and I'll draw a little cat to represent our animal siblings and our plant siblings. This is the manifest side of life in terms of organisms, and this is more the unmanifested side of life in terms of spiritual imagination. And here I'll put some lightning to represent spiritual forces, and I'll put a little heart here to represent not natural spiritual forces, but more etheric spiritual forces. And then over here in the middle, I think that social relations really is God in disguise, and so I will put some kind of a dance hall to represent the social relationships and people dancing and so on and such. And really, we're really economic animals, and so I'm going to put a big bank here, $sign, to represent the economic mode of survival and whatnot. This is the world as I see it. And now, what are the major forces in the world? Who are the actors? How do I want to do this? But this is your personal statement here. This is your personal testimony. Now, I'm giving you a generic way in which I'm assuming that you make a board. Although you wouldn't necessarily have to make a board. What do tea readings do? They have a cup, and that's the board, and the board is imagined onto the cup as certain areas in the cup. But in tarot, you have the spread, but that's more of a concept than any particular kind of board. But in some divination games, they actually have a board. One of the ones I remember seeing is a drum from Africa, and on the drum were painted this kind of thing. And then they placed on the drum the actors, which were different shaped bones. And then they started beating the drum. And after they beat it for a while, that was the synchronicity, shaking all those bones around and then where they landed. Okay, so then the next thing you'll be, what are the major actors? And you may say, well, I feel, because of where I'm coming from, the major forces in this world are emotions. So I'm going to have the emotion of love here. And I think I'm going to get some little clay clay, and I will make little clay things, and this will be in the shape of a heart, and this will be the love, and I'll make a little love bead. And then, or maybe I get to a Monopoly set or some toys at the toy factory or something like that, and I find myself a little automobile, because I know that the other major force in the world besides love is a desire for thrills and thrill-seeking and so on. And I think automobiles is thrill-seeking because I like to drive fast. So I'll get an automobile. And another, and we go through all of the different things that I'm thinking are the major forces in the world. And then I have to decide, okay, I'm going to just toss these. I'll toss my little toys into the game board, and then where they land will be what actor is activating what particular area of life, but what will be the condition of it? Well, I might say right side up, upside down, or tipped over, or which way it's pointing to. Somebody worked with once in a divination system where they took colored waters, and they had this map laid out, and then they introduced colored waters, and then where the waters came and they interacted with each other, that was their particular approach. You just start developing your own particular thing. Is it going to be a throw? One person worked with it where they closed their eyes and they did a painting, and it was just very fast, and then they'd open their eyes and look at what was done. In some divination systems, the diviner takes you by the hand and has you do something, and they look at what you've done. You can look at the toss of a die like the movement of a pencil. Both of them, you're expressing something. In one, maybe you have a little bit more potential control than in another. But that's a continuum rather than an either-or kind of thing. And the main point is that what you're doing here is you're expressing your worldview, and then your worldview is being reflected back to you when you do the divining, which is exactly the way it is that you project out your story about the way the world works, and then you use that as a teaching tool to learn, to come to learn that you are everything, that you're energy, and you're finding your way through life, having the various compensatory synchronistic experiences to round out your experience of life, to open you up to more love, to break you out of certain set patterns, to help you grow. And so we'll be, and by creating our own divination system, we will be retracing the steps of history in a conscious way of how divination systems got born in the first place, by the injection of imagination or soul into the perception of the world and what makes it what it is. Okay.
I hope that you've enjoyed exploring how you might make up a divination game. We began with the town test, which was a very simple way of having you express your own vision of your imaginary world, your worldview. How do you see the cosmos? Of course, it's a mirror of yourself. It's a projection of what's inside comes outside. And this, of course, is something that's involved in divination. The reason that I emphasize so much this creative task of inventing your own divination game is it helps you get behind the curtains, as it were. Go backstage of the divination system that you'll be using. Like, for example, in the tarot, there are many different kinds of spreads. One of the things that's very common in the tarot spread, for example, is the cross of cards, representing a mandala of the types of balanced forces that are at work in a situation. Or you might have in a spread of cards a past, present, and future. These are expressions of a worldview. Now, you might think that these games are kind of silly and don't mean anything, even though we can kind of get into them. But that's fine, because you start to realize that, as well as, say, your own ability to be intuitive and to see the connections and the patterns and what's going on the divination game board, that different divination systems might vary in their power or their inherent wisdom. That's really important for you to realize, especially, for example, if you look at today's tarot decks. There's so many of them around. Some of them have very thought-out symbolism, and some are more into the artistic aspect of it, the appearance of it, and maybe not quite the background of symbolism in it. Some divination games that are being invented today have a lot of depth and power to them, and then others are more, say, more the flashy kind, or something that excites you a little bit but doesn't have necessarily the depth of wisdom behind it. Now we're going to go back to class, and where we're going to see how the role of wisdom, your own intuition, connecting with the person, synchronicity, the quality of the game, all of these things are at work in a divination system and when you do a divination reading. So we're going to go into class to play what I call the question and answer game, which is really a way to let the students see the various components or processes or factors, whatever you want to call them, that are at work when you do a divination reading. So you'll see the contribution of the person's own level of wisdom when they're doing the reading, their intuitive ability in terms of being able to tune into the person they're reading for, also their ability to recognize the patterns at work in what's coming out, and the role of the level of wisdom in the divination material that's available for use. All of these factors come into play. So let's turn now into class and see the setup of the question and answer game, something that you might want to try with your friends at home.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the questions and answers. Okay, well, you know how this game goes. No. We tune into our inner wisdom and develop some answers. And then we'll tune into our sense of neediness, which we all have a bit of, and get some questions, and then we'll play matchmaking. Okay. Here's really how it's going to happen. First, what we're going to do is we'll each of us get a piece of paper, and we're going to have a little meditation to tap into our higher awareness to come up with some wisdom that we will use as the basis of our answers. So everybody, let's sit back and relax. And tune into your breathing. Just accept your breathing as innately wise. So as you're following the breath, on the exhalations you relax and let go. On the inhalations, just let them come to you, as if you're accepting the flow of spirit. You can trust in the breath and accept the breath as a gift of spirit. That's it. And every breath that comes, just allow yourself to experience gratitude. And notice how good that feels. Be grateful for inspiration. As the breath comes in, filled with spirit, filled with wisdom. We're getting in harmony now with the wisdom of Spirit. We're becoming channels of inspiration. And now, coming from a place of abundance, coming from a place of love, coming from a place of inspiration and wisdom, I want you to very quickly pretend like you're reviewing your whole life now, all the things that you've learned through this life. Just pretend that very quickly your whole life passes before you, and you review all the things that you've learned from all of your experiences. And you decide now that you are going to bequeath a gift to the next generation. This gift is going to be one truth, one important piece of wisdom that you have learned from this life, that you wish now, you look back, that if you had known this piece of wisdom as you entered this life and used it as you went through the life, it really would have helped you. So what would be this one piece of wisdom, this one truth that you would pass on to the next generation as your gift? Let it come to you now in love and sharing. Take a deep breath and wiggle your fingers and open your eyes and write down on your piece of paper a statement of that one truth or piece of wisdom. Okay, when you've got your wisdom, take it and fold it up, wad it up, and we'll put it here in the answer jar. So I'll pass around the answer jar, and you can dump your wisdom into the answer jar. Right, so here we have the answers. All the answers we'll ever need are in this jar. And for the commercial set, we have also, here we will use 52 affirmation cards that came from Ernie Larson's and Hazelton Productions. So we will shuffle those up and we'll have these as well to use. Okay, now the next part, everybody take a piece of paper. And I'd like you, all of us, are going to think of a specific question, a personal question, concerning some kind of issue, dilemma, problem, challenge that's facing you in your life right now. Something for which you might naturally seek out psychic or a guide or a counselor or somebody to pose this question to. You're going to, in effect, pose your question to the Atlantic University Oracle, who will try to give you an answer. So these questions will be read publicly, but they will be read publicly anonymously. So you don't have to worry about your identity being revealed in the question. And to have the question be specific in the sense of not general, you know, is synchronicity causal or acausal? Not to ask something like that, but should I tell my boss off or should I just let it go? What's the best way for me to lose weight? I've tried everything. You know, whatever. Something that you're asking sincerely. I think it's important that the question be sincere. Wad up your questions. I don't want to see the question. You'll have to make your own best guess as to. Okay. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to reach in here and I'm going to pull out a question, but I'm not going to read it. And one of us, and we'll take turns, is going to go through a process of being a psychic oracle, and it's going to give an answer to this question through a process that I will demonstrate. At that time, when they've finished, we will reach in here for another piece of wisdom that will be an answer, and we will read that. And somebody will draw a card here from these change cards, and we'll read that. So we'll have a question, we'll have a psychic reading, we'll have an answer, and we'll have a change card. And we'll discuss it for a little bit to see what we think seems to be the developing wisdom about that question. And then we'll go on to the next question until we've processed all the questions in the jar. And then in the end, we'll have some discussion about what do we think about how well the questions were answered from our 90% external point of view. Because 9 out of the 10 questions we didn't ask. Did it seem like in some of the questions there was a telepathic link-up between the person reading and the person who asked the question? Did there seem to be some synchronicity between the question drawn and the answer drawn? What about the level of wisdom in the answers relative to the level of wisdom in these commercially prepared cards? Is there some difference in the level of wisdom that is put into a divination system? How much wisdom energy was put into these answers? How much wisdom energy were put into these answers? How much intuitive connection was there going on with the oracle? So that's the way that we will proceed. Okay, so this is the questions. I'm going to draw a question out. I have it here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get into a meditative state by focusing on my breath and reminding myself that I can trust in inspiration. That gets me into a flow state. I don't have to make anything happen. I can accept whatever comes. Now, I don't know who asked this question, and I don't know what the question is, but I'm going to set the intention that I'm going to reach out with my heart, and I'm going to make a heart connection with the questioner and the sincerity with which they're asking this particular question. So just imagine making that heart contact with the person. The caring is important. And now I'm going to be asked that Spirit will guide me, and I can trust in inspiration. Spirit will guide me and will bring forth into my memory, into my awareness, a memory of a specific experience from my past, very likely a trivial one that I have no idea why it's coming to my mind. I'm going to ask that a memory come forward that when I start describing the memory and processing the memory, I'll be able to use it as a basis for developing a piece of wisdom. So without knowing the purpose exactly, because I don't know the question, I'm just asking Spirit now to send into my awareness a particular memory that Spirit thinks is the memory that I should focus on. So give me a moment for that to happen. okay, coming to me of taking out the trash. This time when I was taking out the trash and I dumped the trash can into the big trash, and I was walking back to bring the trash can back into the house, and I was just sort of looking into the trash can, and I noticed that there was some crud on the inside of the trash can. And I decided I had seen that there before, and it had bothered me, and I hadn't done anything about it. Well, why don't I just clean it up? So I went and got some soap and water, and I washed out and scoured the trash can, rinsed it off, let it drain, and then I brought it back into the house. That happened within the last few months. It's a little trivial memory. I don't know why I was thinking of that, but seeing the trash can lid, sort of smelling a garbagey feeling, and sensing that in there. Now, so that's the memory. I've described the memory. Now what I do is I ask for guidance from my higher self as I talk out loud, think out loud, basically, speaking from the heart, which means improvisationally, and I'm just going to say, what do I have to learn from this experience? If that little memory, if I treat it like a teaching story, what's the message? And it is, the first thing that starts coming to me is the message is something about not doing something completely. You can take the trash out, but if you don't really clean the can, you're sort of taking some of the trash back with you. And so that there can be a pattern repeating. I noticed that one of the things in my memory was that as I was bringing the can back in and I saw the crud in the trash can, that I had seen this crud before. I recognize this crud. You know, I've been walking back and forth for several weeks with the same crud, you know, on the inside of the trash can. So that sort of suggests a pattern, something that repeats, that you think that's out with the old and in with the new, but that lots of stuff you really aren't doing a clean overhaul, and so you're just bringing it right back in. And what did I have to go through? Sort of get out of my habit pattern and say, okay, I'll take the time, I'll go get the soap, I'll get the sponge, and take that extra time and clean it up, and then it really smells fresh, it's clean, and have a new start. So the moral of the story seems to be that it can look like you're making a clean start with something. It can look like that you're getting rid of the old and starting fresh, but lots of times you sort of hold on to some stuff and think, well, it really doesn't matter, what have you, and maybe it's really worth the time to do a good inventory and clean house and do a thorough job. It doesn't take that long, and it really pays off. Okay, so that's my reading on this question. Now, let's see what the question is. Okay, and if somebody, whosever question is, just keep your poker face, because we're not dealing with personalities here yet. We're dealing with questions and answers. Okay. Should I pursue a job possibility outside the company? So here's somebody who is contemplating some change, moving on perhaps, we don't know, and see how my story may relate to it. You may or may not see some connections. We can discuss that in a moment. And now I'll reach in here and I will draw out an answer. This is somebody's lifelong developed wisdom. We'll see how it synchronistically applies to the answer. Be patient. Guidance will reveal itself. Trust. Alrighty. And we will dip into these change cards. And the change card that I draw out says, today I claim the power that is mine to choose the attitude by which I live.
Whoa.
Okay, so you heard my story, committee. You heard, be patient, guidance will reveal itself, trust. Today I claim the power that is mine to choose the attitude by which I live. Now this person is asking, should I pursue a job possibility outside the company? What's your feeling? What's the trend of the advice? Anybody?
Sounds like trust your instincts.
Trust your instincts, okay.
Let go of the past.
Let go of the past, Then maybe the person is contemplating pursuing a job outside the company, bringing the company along a little bit or something. In my feeling there would be some
what's
clinging.
Clean up where you are now, too.
Clean up where you
Clean
are
up
now,
where you
too.
are now, or else if you do make a change, you could just find yourself in the exact situation.
Uh-huh, yeah,
So
bringing along some
look
crud.
and see what you, why you'd even consider this.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Changing attitudes, old attitudes or old habits.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Getting off to a clean start.
Yeah, getting off to a clean start and recognize you have the power to choose that.
Right.
You have the power to choose. It says, be patient, guidance will reveal itself, trust. So trust, and I claim the power, that somehow I can claim it, I can trust that it would be, and anything else? Be patient. Guidance will reveal itself. Today I claim the power. Those seem to go against each other, huh? One is sort of relaxed, it'll all work out. The other one says, claim, make your statement.
Well, not necessarily. Claim, it doesn't, you read it that way,
Uh-huh.
but
Oh, you read it.
that's-
Let's hear you read
you
it.
could say, today I claim the power that is mine to choose the attitude by which I live. And sometimes we get so connected to where we are, we feel obligated,
Mm-hmm.
and we can make a shift in our attitude that allows us more possibilities.
Uh-huh.
But also guidance could come and then you can claim the power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could be related and
Right,
not contradictory.
right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's your feeling on a scale from 1 to 10? How right on did the reading, that was the part that I made up, do? And on a scale from 1 to 10, how right on did you think the question was? Was it pertinent? Did it speak to the point? And on a scale from 1 to 10, how do you think about the wisdom card? Was it right on? So just sort of make some notes, and if you want to write anything else about this particular question. One of the things we'll do at the end is we'll sort of do an average rating, you know, see kind of where everything is at. Not scientific, but we're going to be going through 10 of these, and so just make some notes as to your gut reaction, your feeling, and so on about this particular situation. Okay? All right, now we will close in here and focus on Christy. Yes, and Christy is going to reach into the question jar and pull out a question. Very good, and she's holding the question in her hand there. And we will all silently guide Christy now and surround her with light as she's focusing on her breathing to remind herself that she can trust an inspiration.
Okay, I think the lesson in that one was ask for help when I need it. Don't be afraid to ask others to lend a hand, and don't be too proud to ask. I think that's the moral of the story.
Okay.
Maybe not quite often when I can share.
All right. So now we're going to reach in. Oh, read the question that's being asked.
Do I have to tell if I know someone is lying?
Say that again.
Do I have to tell if I know someone is lying?
Okay. Let's hope that this is not a hypothetical question. Do I have to tell if I know someone is lying? Okay, so we'll assume that they're in a situation where they know that someone is lying and they're wondering whether or not they should tell on them that this is real and not hypothetical. Okay, very good. So now that's the question. So now here, reach into the... And the answer is, I think maybe it starts over here.
Okay. Forgiveness. Each night before going to sleep, forgive yourself for any wrongs you feel you may have committed that day, and forgive others for any slights you feel have been made against you. That's pretty poignant.
Okay, and we will slide these cards over here for you. And you can now draw a wisdom card.
Okay.
Like a Wizard of Oz.
Today, I will not look to anybody else for what I can only find in myself.
Okay.
Okay, I'll repeat that. Today,
Okay.
I will not look to anybody else for what I can only find in myself.
Now, it sounds to me like that's a direct contradiction
It does.
to the other. With her, she's saying in her connection, don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't be afraid to ask for help. This card says, today I will not look to anybody else for what I can only find in myself. Now, maybe that's a contradiction or not, but now this is what I'm wanting you all to be sensitive to. This, we would say, would be synchronicity. Her story is some kind of an intuitive, psychic connection, possibly synchronicity, but she's also bringing her own intuitive connectedness into it. And this one is, maybe it's synchronicity, maybe it's psychic. We can discuss it more at length later, but and so now we hand it off to the next person, giving them a question to draw. And as they draw the question, then they'll get into the space of divine mind, as we've learned how, by getting into the breath, the flow of the breath, and then the gratitude and the open heart, and coming up with a memory, asking that memory help them understand themselves in such a way that it would be helpful to the question that they're holding. And then we draw something from the answer jar that a student had contributed, as well as one of the commercial cards. In this case, we're using the change cards by Erling Larson, but we could have easily have used I Ching, hexagrams, tarot cards, or other sources of commercially available and ancient wisdom. And so each student gets a chance to play, and then at the end we'll have a way to go about seeing which of the sources, the intuitive reading the student provided, the answer from the jar, or the commercially available piece of wisdom, how helpful were each of these sources in the total divination for that particular question. Well, you can see, like in what you're doing, we have our course called Divination, Synchronicity, Intuition, and what they all have in common is looking for patterns, seeing patterns, putting the patterns together. The one person had called intuition seeing the patterns that connect. In other words, sort of knowing which patterns to use to see how things connect together. Intuition, we feel somehow, we feel it, we sort of know what's what, and we're trying to bring that up. And how do we bring that up? We draw on things that we know, words that we know, things that we've experienced. We're trying to make sense out of something. And in divination, we're trying to understand what is the harmony here. There's some way to move that would be very smooth, that would be loving, that would be whatever. And we're trying to sort of piece the thing together. And in divination, also, you're having to then look at the cards and something else, and we're using 2 or 3 things, and you're sort of sifting through it. And we've been watching now, as the people sift through the different information, they start getting more of a feeling for what are we talking about here. We have the person's question, we have this answer, we have this story. All of these events are part of a pattern, the pattern of this issue, this unnamed issue, or it's sort of named. And we start, as we talk about it, we start, you might say, settling into what it is, and we start having more and more of a feeling like we're drawing on something maybe we've experienced before, some wisdom of the universe, some pattern of living, pattern of experience that people encounter in their life. And I think we're experiencing what is involved, the different components of consulting an oracle or doing the divination.
So that was the question and answer game. And I really enjoy playing with the students. They have a lot of fun with it, and they can really get an appreciation for the role of their own intuition
in doing divination readings. They really enjoy also afterwards sitting around and talking about the role of the various components in divination and their contribution to giving a really good, insightful answer to a person's question. There's something about this question and answer game that kind of like lifts up the hood on the engine of spiritual guidance so that they can see the different factors that are at work. Because normally when you do a divination reading, it's very hard for the person to tell how much of the answer that they're getting depended on the cards that landed and the reader's own abilities and so on. But the question and answer game brings all this out into the open, and people get a real feeling for it. So I'd really encourage you to get together with some friends and play the question and answer game. It's really fun and it's very instructive. In the video that you saw, we were using a change deck, but we could have used tarot cards or the I Ching or something of that sort. It doesn't really matter. It's just that you use something that has some investment of time and energy that's professionally done, and use that to compare it with what the students come up with in terms of their own legacy of wisdom that they would leave behind, and of course then their own intuition. Now, as you saw, we had the students do some ratings and rankings on the role of the various components and what they felt they contributed to the answer. Now, in many of these classes, the results have been the same. The students have concluded that it's the reader's own intuitive ability that really matters most, especially their way of somehow connecting in with the seeker and giving information and saying things that touch the seeker right in the core. And if there's a runner-up, it's been the quality of the wisdom in the professional set of answers, the tarot, the change card, or whatever is being used. So in your own development of your ability to do divination readings, you can learn from this question and answer game. And the lesson would be, first of all, it's your own intuition that matters most. And as we saw, using the intuitive heart method, where you use the memory divination to express this heart awareness for the person, allowing your memory to be its own wisdom story in the teaching that it implies. That's an excellent way for you to begin to develop your intuition for doing these divination readings. And the second lesson that we would get from all of this is that whatever system you're going to use, pick one that has shown the test of time. If a tarot deck, which would be fine, then perhaps one of the older decks that have been around for some time, or if a newer deck, then one that's done with some integrity and really strikes a deep chord with you. And beyond whatever deck you might get, you could certainly do well by reading up on the symbolism. Tarot, for example, has a wealth of symbolism behind it. And regardless of what deck you use, the study of the symbolism in the cards can pay off for you because they provide a lot of triggers for your own intuitive insight as you're making up the story and exploring the meaning of the results that you've obtained. Now, I said at the beginning of our seminars that the real purpose in learning divination is to somehow be able to see into divine mind. And divine mind is at play, and that's why we call it the divination game and the game board and so on. But to the person who's very intuitive and in touch with divine mind, we can see the divine play anywhere. And so I've shown my students that at the end of this course, by going through these exercises and not just learning by rote, say, how to read a tarot deck, that they're actually developing their intuition and can trust it to lead them to see divine mind in their surroundings. And we're going to see in a moment where I lead the students on doing a divination in terms of simply what happens when they just look randomly around the room and what catches their attention and what could they make out of that. How could they read divine mind into what their eyes happen to land upon? And you'll see them do this and hear them speak a little bit about what they've learned then from this course. So I hope that you'll follow through on some of these exercises that you've seen in this video. So beyond learning how to do a divination reading such as the tarot, that you'll also enjoy developing your own intuition to see in the divine mind, enjoy the divine play. And then as a final farewell, you'll see some of the divination games that our students have made up. You might enjoy making up a game yourself. It's a great way to bring into your consciousness your own inner sense of what the divine play is and how divine mind works. So I hope you enjoy seeing those games. So this has been a very fun video seminar, and with these words I'll bid you adieu and let the students have the last word. Bye-bye. Pretty dizzy now as we're rotating our heads, and we're going to see what in the room, what in our environment in a moment is going to capture our eye and trigger some insight about divination that we would like to share with other people. Okay, so when you're ready, wherever your head feels like it wants to stop, open your eyes and see what are you looking at. What does that suggest to me about what I've learned about divination?
When I opened my eyes, I looked at that photograph over there of the bird in flight. And what that triggered for me is that with divination you can go higher than what you thought you can go. To soar with it, to spread your wings, so to speak, and go with what's there. Lighten up and float. It's in you. It's easier to do than you think. And it's individual. I also thought it might be a seagull there, so I thought of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Do your own thing. It doesn't have to be a tarot reading or a specific thing. We've created our own divination systems, and go with what's intuitively your own. With it, trust it.
When I opened my eyes, I saw Christie's cards on the table in front of me, and what that meant to me, in terms of what I've learned in this class, is that divination is a way of tapping into our creativity, and when we need it the most is when we've gotten stuck in terms of our creativity, and we need some kind of something to jog us, to open our imagination, because that's really the key thing, is the power of the imagination. I learned that was one of the things I thought was so powerful in guiding us. So all our guidance is within. It's just we need triggers for our imaginations. And her cards to me showed not only the aesthetic element and how it can trigger our imagination, but it also illustrated how when I came to the class, I thought we were going to learn, there are certain things, and what I've learned is there are an infinite number of possible ways to divine what we need for our personal guidance. And as Donna Gale said, it's given me a lot more confidence in how intuitive I am. In fact, I've been surprised at my own intuition, because I was here to develop my intuitive powers, and I've discovered that I have some pretty well-developed intuitive powers.